and it attends 7-year anniversary. This previous year, FNAF had its 7th anniversary, which is pretty significant because this year Skyrim also had its 10th anniversary, which is freaking absolutely nuts because I think of Skyrim as like this behemoth of gaming that's defying the odds, and it has thanks to modding, but FNAF itself isn't much younger, at least as a series. Not many people still play the first game, but only a 3-year difference between them? That's kind of mind-blowing in my opinion. I didn't really think about that. And to think that this series, 7 years later, 9 full games, at least 2 spin-off games, 15 books, and a work-in-progress movie later, still going strong? Absolute madness. The FNAF fanverse of madness. Haha, yeah, that's the movie that's coming out. Boom! Just confirmed it. It's really a joy of creation-based movie. What, you thought it was gonna be Five Nights at Freddy's? Ha! Funny. Imagine if that was actually the case though. Now that would be crazy. And a 9th soft reboot. The soft reboot the series is undergoing at the moment, and more so at the time of Help Wanted, was something that we hadn't really seen before, at least in the FNAF series, and seemingly started the trend of characters from games becoming sentient and trying to escape the confines of the game itself and escape into the real world that we see play out in the FNAF games after Afton becomes sentient code, and then like every other indie game, apparently. But even then, the next game seems to throw that idea away while keeping what happened in that game, or at least the mobile port of the game, canon with Princess Quest. The real issue comes from the next soft reboot they attempted to do in Security Breach, with Afton now having a physical form again, his death being a mystery, and the game setting up the next owner to go wherever they want. And while I do understand that, I wish that they could have just like set one path, you know? Or at least just killed William for us. Permanently. Clearly on screen. Scott, please. In a game theory. Like it or not, love him or hate him, MatPat making his first FNAF game theory back in 2014 is certainly a huge moment for FNAF. While yes, FNAF did outvote Slenderman in his original poll about what episode he should cover next, this is where I, along with sure many other people, had found the series. Especially since I was just finishing up my first year of high school, hearing the details explained was certainly helpful for me understanding the series, because at that point, I wasn't really a super sleuth like I am now. And really, since I'm not a big fan of horror, it was my only exposure to the games, aside from like Smosh games playing it, like the first few. But it's really in the game theories where the lore and puzzles shined, with the first FNAF theory having over 27 million views, and my sister constantly saying that she's going to rewatch all the theories so that she can understand what I'm talking about, even though that's probably way outdated at this point. This is where the FNAF audience grew exponentially, and really no other channel has been able to bring widespread awareness to an indie franchise like that from what I remember. I think that a lot of the success of FNAF can be dedicated to MatPat, but also just the game being interesting enough for MatPat to cover. While channels like Dawko and FNAF talk about FNAF more, those channels, along with this one, are more so for people who are already fans of the series. But that first FNAF theory, had it not have been made, I'm pretty sure would have changed everything. And it's 7 Dream Theory. The actual concept of Dream Theory is nothing new to any series, really. The idea that everything we've seen could just be a dream is possible with any form of media. But when it comes to FNAF, this idea made a lot of people upset. And I guess, like, that's understandable. With everything being a dream, it in essence makes the lore of the series worthless. So the hours and hours that people spent trying to work it out would be pointless if this was true. However, if this was the intention, we never knew, since in FNAF 4's ending we see a locked box with the now infamous line of perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. And that for now has been around 6 years. Currently, according to Scott, from what I've seen, nobody has solved FNAF 4 yet. But then again, I don't think that Scott knows who we are, so maybe I have and he just doesn't know it. But with the game surrounding a kid in a coma who's experiencing nightmares after being chomped on by a seriously overpowered animatronic jaw, I think us getting the idea that this could be indicating everything was a dream is honestly a little par for the course at this point. We were so invested that we actually started scanning the source code of websites and found a real-world pizzeria with coordinates thanks to multiple 8s and 7s that were hidden around the source code. I still don't know if that was accidental or not. And at 6, expanded lore. While looking for FNAF lore was originally a simple thing to do, ever since we were introduced to the purple guy, things got a little more complicated. I mean, like clicking on a secret action figure on your desk. Alright, punching a phone number into wall tiles? That seems absolutely bonkers. And yes, Chris, that's actually a thing they had to do in FNAF 3. But then it got even more intense, with us starting to check the source code of Scott's website, the files for the games. We had to reconstruct original file names to get Vanny's name before the game come out by opening image teasers as text documents, and more. All of that, and we still haven't figured out FNAF 4? Really? What the hell's wrong with us? This expanding lore, or I guess the expansion of ways we found the lore of the series, was incredibly important to the actual success of the series. It was really what kept the series going, and what made so many people love to hate and hate to love talking about it. It's like the world's longest ARG. The complexity of the story, I'm sure, was a result of this, though, not because Scott didn't know where he was going until later on or something like that. Like, if we had been given the story in a comprehensive way, I'm sure that we'd know everything, but knowing everything would also have made us forget. The complexity, while making things basically impossible to solve, is what kept the series going and gave it so much longevity for 7 years. I mean, we're still trying to solve it now. And you can see some games trying to recreate it, like Poppy Playtime, for example. So, yeah, needless to say, even if accidental, great business model. Halfway through into number 5, retirement. Scott Cawthon's retirement was actually pretty shocking, and while it may have been following controversy, according to Scott, it had nothing to do with the backlash he was getting over his political donations, which were partially made to anti-LGBTQ politicians, which many found offensive, given that a large portion of the FNAF fandom identifies as part of the LGBTQ+ community. However, he still stood by the fact that his retirement was not due to the controversy, and said it was really due to wanting more time with his family, so that he could make games for his kids and even RPG games, even if he's horrible at them. His words, not mine. However, this is probably a hugely impactful moment, since after all, FNAF was Scott's series, and this left us wondering if Security Breach would even be released. But he assured us that FNAF would continue on, and now that Security Breach is out, Scott, I'm sure, is looking for a successor to the series amongst the people that he's actually worked with. It's not gonna be MatPat, it's not gonna be Daco or Markiplier, it's probably gonna be someone that he has worked with who knows the series well, like Andrea Wagner, co-author of the Fazbear Frights books, especially since they seem to be headed in that direction now with the introduction of the Blob and Security Breach. In it for 87 days. 87 days! FNAF 1's release started a whole cascade of events that would later go on to haunt my dreams and my life. However, before there were many, there were the two. The first 2 FNAF games, to be exact. And they are some of the most crucial to the series, since this is when the story really started to be created. Moving on from just a couple of haunted animatronics that were somehow mad at you, to a mysterious killer indicated only by the color purple. Yet something more than the release of the second game happened on November 11, 2014 for the FNAF franchise, with this game releasing exactly 87 days after the first. A reference to the infamous Bite of 87, referring to an animatronic incident occurring in 1987 revealed to us via newspaper articles in the first game. Basically, someone's frontal lobe got removed by an animatronic. We still don't know which animatronic actually. This was the start of a larger hunt for lore. This one Easter egg of 87 days between the 2 games made us ready for whatever convoluted source code editing, file name searching crap we had to deal with. And honestly, I don't know if I regret it or not. Like, I haven't decided. Let's see if I keep having nightmares, and then I can make it official. Getting close to the end into number 3, FNAF 1's release. Let's face it, without the release of the first game, none of this would have been possible, and I think that's pretty obvious, which makes it the most important moment of all time. However, it's not the biggest moment of all time, so it's only gonna get number 3. But on that faithful day of August 8th, 2014, the world was changed, and a path was set for everyone who would talk about this series. If I only knew that this simple horror game would come to dominate my life 6 years later. We all have fond memories with FNAF, so please share your favorite FNAF moments or moments just in general with FNAF in the comments. The release of the first game though was the catalyst for everything else, so it is absolutely the most important moment in the series, as well as in Scott's game design career. After everything seemingly flopping like Chipper and Sons Lumber Co., where the best character of Coffee comes from, this one game changed everything and made waves for the indie horror scene as a whole. Without the success of FNAF, we wouldn't have gotten Poppy Playtime, surely. And ultimately, in at number 2, PlayStation events. The latest game in the FNAF series, Security Breach, had a lot of traction even before being announced. Everyone was eagerly and impatiently waiting for the next game that would no doubt explain what happens to Glitch Trap in his story. And while it took a couple years, the game would eventually come out. But before it did, it was featured at PlayStation events due to being a PlayStation exclusive until February of 2022. However, the beauty of this, and the reason it's on this list, is because of just how far it's come. The series has come such a long way, so seeing it featured with God of War, Battlefield, and so many other huge franchises really makes you see how big FNAF has gotten, especially since it started as a point-and-click survival horror game from a wannabe game designer who was giving it one last shot. It's incredible how life puts things together sometimes, and honestly, it's crazy how much FNAF has impacted everyone's lives. Without FNAF, so much of my life would be different. I mean, like, who knows? I wouldn't have had that section in like my grade 10 trauma exam. I would have replaced it with something else, which could have led to a whole different experience for the next 2 years. Plus, there wouldn't be a picture of me as Golden Freddy in what is probably the most haunting thing from my high school experience, and that's saying a lot, trust me. So yeah. And finally, in at number 1, Security Breach. The release of Security Breach on December 16, 2021 was probably the biggest moment the series has had so far, with the game being featured alongside iconic series as previously mentioned. Plus, the amount of hype for this game and channels that I didn't even know knew what FNAF was still managed to play Security Breach. This game launch has been so huge, and FNAF as a series has just come such a long way from being point-and-click survival. So just as Fazbear Entertainment has grown, so has the series and Scott himself, able to release bigger and better games than ever before, especially this one of the most anticipated gaming sequels like ever, at least based on search statistics. And while the game may have been delayed, it was delayed so that they could make it even bigger and better, and they've made an incredible game, aside from all the glitches. With 9 games in the series, honestly, they could end it here and still provide countless people with pleasant memories and this channel with more content. It's been an incredible ride and incredible to watch. The first game released the summer after my freshman year of high school, and for 7 years I've grown along with the series. And there's really very few games like that, and I think that's what makes FNAF so special. In a 10 hiding spot. This is based on the story, but how the absolute living hell did William get away with this, okay? Hiding the bodies in animatronics? Dude, the smell of rotting bodies would absolutely ruin anything, and the heat from the animatronics moving would speed up the actual decomp of the bodies inside, thus making it worse. And the animatronics are in front of other children every single day, okay? Like, parents even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking mucus and blood, as well as, quote, smelling like death, okay? If this was real, and William getting away with this wasn't important for the story of the games, he would have been caught instantly. They never found the bodies of these kids. Like, oh, we never found the bodies of these kids that supposedly went missing in this pizza place, but now their animatronics are starting to leak blood and are reporting to smell like death. Maybe we should check these out. Oh man, look, 5 dead bodies corresponding to different victims that went missing on the premises. William, you're under arrest. See, like, I don't get how this wasn't cut and dry. How this didn't just... How? In at 9, Mrs. Afton's death. This is more so embarrassing because of the community as a whole. The story of Mrs. Afton, if there even is one, is a mystery that we've been debating for ages. A story that hasn't even had a slight amount of explanation, okay? No references, no mention of an actual name, nothing. So naturally, there are theories. However, these theories have no actual base in game lore, and instead focus on FNAF animated music videos, and stories, and fan fictions that are treated as canon, and sometimes heavily so. The truth is that we have no idea what happened to Mrs. Afton currently, alright? We don't even know if there really was a Mrs. Afton, or if it was just like a baby mama or a one-night stand, or like maybe William ended up having like a surrogate so that he could have children of his own, alright? His kids may also just be adopted. There's a whole series of explanations as to what can actually be the case. But either way, for some reason, okay, and I don't know what really caused this to pick up, a load of people think that Mrs. Afton died in a car accident. Like, I mean, it's a possibility. That doesn't mean that it's canon, okay? Technically, there's infinite possibilities, okay? I mean, there are also others that think that William killed her, or that she just left him because she found out what he was into, but then again, for some reason, she would also have had to leave him with his prime demographic. Others think that the reason that she left was because he started killing. Others think that she died in a plane crash, and you know what? All are equally possible, but nothing is actually canon, so stop treating it like it is, because frankly, it's embarrassing. In at 8, Princess Quest. Another embarrassing moment for William. Alright, the whole reason he made Princess Quest a thing in the first place was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her body whenever William needed it, okay? So why the hell did William create some sort of fail-safe to let her escape? Like, okay, maybe he didn't expect Gregory to come along, or maybe he did and figure it out, I don't know. But given the track record of this series and the amount of times William himself, just alone, has been burned, literally, you think that he would have smartened up already. But you know what? He didn't. And you know, it's like having a self-destruction button, okay? It's like having something on the inside of the Iron Man suit, or on the outside of the Iron Man suit, that someone can just tap and then boom, it doesn't work anymore. Like, why? Why would you do that? It's stupid. If you want something to work, why give it away to not work? Like, this is one of the dumbest things that William has done. And it's 7, Mic Trap. The Mic Trap versus Will Trap debate, at least in our comment section, seems to be over. Well, at least it was until other videos went out, because, you know, people are gonna start trolling again. However, the debate over who is in the Springtrap suit is sometimes still heavily debated on other comment sections and like on Reddit. And this is specifically thanks to the final scene from the sister location final cutscene that involved the final speech from Michael and the reappearance of Springtrap, confirming theories about him surviving the Fazbear Frights fire. However, the appearance of Springtrap, accompanied by the line of "I'm going to come find you," left some people thinking that Michael was the one in the Springtrap suit instead of William, also leading to the conclusion that Michael was the purple guy instead of William, which is also wrong, as confirmed by Scott when he said check MatPat's explanation on the subject, which MatPat concluded that Michael had no way of being the purple guy and thusly is not Springtrap. But, you know, people are still yelling about it. Even Scraptrap reignited this debate. Like, people now think, or at least used to also think, that Scraptrap was Michael or William, and that Springtrap was William or Michael. And it's 6, Pizza Bot. One of the most interesting things to me in Security Breach was the Pizza Bot minigame, where you choose to go to the bottom of the Pizzaplex, and then, like, you go through the vent and try to escape the Pizzaplex instead of going through L chips. At that point, you end up getting locked in a security office where Chica is outside the only working door. So, to lure her away, you need to make a pizza using one of the chef bots. So then she goes and gets the pizza, and then you can leave through the door. It's actually like a really cool look into like the Fazbear kitchen and how it operates now, with service bots kind of taking up the positions of people because they can be unpaid, but also I'm guessing are more reliable to not kill people than humans, which is kind of funny when you're talking about this series. However, the funniest part about it was when I got stuck in the sauce machine and decided to say, "Oh no, Steph Chica," and that's what made this embarrassing for me. I said in a different video I would talk about it at some other point, and this is that point, okay? I don't know how it happened, but when I was making the pizza, I got phased into the sauce machine, which resulted in me being unable to actually finish the pizza, so I just had to wait to be jump scared to retry. But while I was waiting, I decided to say, "Oh no, Step Chica, I'm stuck in the sauce machine. I hope nobody comes by and licks sauce out of my," and then I won't finish that sentence because I think it's fairly evident where I was going. Yeah, that was a low moment for the barnacle. Halfway through into number 5, real life. The Twitter account Diamond Zia on June 27, 2020 tweeted out 3 photos with the line, "FNAF will be real in 48 hours. These pictures were of news articles. One from USA Today titled 5 children have gone missing inside Chuck E. Cheese. Parents report smells coming ... One from Associated Press called, quote, "Post-hour worker at Chuck E. Cheese reported dead at 27. And a final one from the Something News titled "Night shift worker at Chuck E. Cheese claims strange movements from animatronics during post hours." However, this title had animatronics spelt incorrectly. It said Amicatronics. Everyone was freaking out, and pictures of the articles, particularly the first one, were shared all over the internet. People were like absolutely spamming everyone, especially because this was around the time where Chuck E. Cheese had announced its closure. However, people didn't realize that these were fake. How are they fake, do you ask? It's easy. They just edited the source code, okay? Because you can change what anything says on a website, but it will only change for you until you reload the page, okay? And you can do this by editing the source code. You just need to find the aspect you're looking for, and then you can change what it says. Once you do that, you can do basically whatever you want. You can even change pictures, okay? So whoever made the original image just found an article from USA Today. It didn't even have to be about Chuck E. Cheese, because they could have changed the picture, and they just changed the title to 5 missing children going missing, and like the same thing with the other articles, hence why there were only images of the articles and not actual links. It was a hoax that blew up, and people actually believed it, and some still do. In it for disturbing desires. So this is something that I've noticed in the comments that actually worries me, as well as pretty embarrassing. So we've made a series of videos about how we could turn the closed Chuck E. Cheese restaurants into FNAF joints, okay? Or even like just one ideal location. Not in Utah, though, ironically. But you see, in the comments of those videos, which you should totally go watch, by the way, then share them with Scott, because I want to kind of do that even if it's just open for like a week or a weekend. And I mean, like, if Mr. Beast can open fast food, I'm sure Scott can make this happen, okay? The comments, though, on those videos are full of various people telling me how they think it would be a great idea, because then they could die in the FNAF restaurant and go on to possess an animatronic. What? Why the absolute living would you want that? First of all, okay, possession, Not real. That's not a thing in real life. I've yet to see real evidence of it or anything else paranormal. In addition to that though, even going by FNAF rules, you would need to suffer in order to die and generate the agony that is needed to possess something. Since in FNAF, all possession is actually just a manifestation of your extreme agony grabbing onto something that's nearby, as we learned from Fazbear Frights and Dr. Phineas Taggart. Getting close to the end in number 3, forgetting Foxy. I'm pretty sure that the Foxy mechanic was added to help keep the player from just keeping their screen down for the whole night, since I don't think you can really get jump scared if you don't bring up the tablet with the cameras unless like you're looking to the wrong side of the office. So Foxy was a way to ensure that you actually had to load up the cameras and hold them back as a way to actually have the possibility of being jump scared. Because if you don't look at Foxy throughout the whole first night, he can actually jump scare you. However, forgetting about Foxy and not checking Pirate's Cove is a horrible idea, even if unintentional. My personal strategy is to put the camera on Pirate's Cove when you close the tablet, so that you make sure that when you open it the next time, Foxy gets his dose, okay? He gets his attention. And just like Peanut, the SCP, he'll stay in place. And that just makes sure that I don't forget about him either, because my reaction time isn't fast enough to stop him from getting into the office. But ultimately, in at number 2, purple versus pink. The purple versus pink guy debate is the Mike versus Will Trap debate, okay? But it's from the early days, when all we had to worry about was different colors and not like 14 different purple characters. This debate came after FNAF 2's Foxy Go 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 minigame, where some fans believed that the guy standing in the corner all smiley was a different group of dead kids, and it was a different killer because he was slightly lighter. That's right, he was not the exact hexadecimal code for purple that we knew, so we thought it was a different person. And you know what? This is stupid. Don't do this, okay? They're all the purple guy. It says so in the FNAF like handbook or whatever it's called. It says purple guy, okay? He's the purple guy. Stop it. Leave me alone, okay? I only use the pink guy when I need an extra slot on a list because there's not enough William Afton versions or something like that, okay? It's purple guy. And finally, in at number 1, the Bite of 83. The Bite of 87 was one of the most mysterious moments in the entirety of the FNAF series, and it was introduced in the first game. Being introduced in the series into FNAF 1 from 2014, the Bite of 87 has remained one of the most debated points in FNAF history, and we can't quite agree on what happened. At first, we thought it was Golden Freddy who caused it, then Freddy, then Mangle, then Fredbear, then Toy Chica, then back to Mangle, and then everyone in between. And everyone has their own opinion on the subject, but for some reason, most people think that FNAF 4 is the Bite of 87. However, it's been confirmed that it's the Bite of 83. Okay, if you Google the Bite of 87 as well, you get pictures from FNAF 4, which is not helping. And I don't think it helped that one of the most famous lines Markiplier has ever said was that the Bite of 87? It wasn't, Mark. I'm sorry. Okay, it's been years. Everyone needs to stop it, okay? The Bite of 83 is FNAF 4, and I still see it in the comments today, so stop it. And at 10, the Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is one of the most mysterious moments in the entire FNAF series, and it was introduced in the first game. So we've been dealing with this thing for like nearly 10 years. Being introduced into the series in FNAF 1 from 2014, the Bite of 87 has remained one of the most debated points in FNAF history, and we can't quite agree on what happened. At first, we thought it was Golden Freddy who caused the bite, then Normal Freddy, then Mangle, then Fredbear, then Toy Chica, then back to Mangle, and everyone has their different opinion on the subject. But for some reason, people also think that it's confirmed that the Bite of 83 from FNAF 4 is the Bite of 87. Which it isn't. And if you look up Bite of 87 on Google, you get pictures of the bite from FNAF 4, which is in 1983, which is, as I'm sure you can tell, confusing for our editors. I'm sure that you're seeing pictures of the incident now, honestly. Like, the Bite of 87 and 83 have been confused for ages, and they're still being confused to this day. Mostly because of Markiplier asking if that was the Bite of 87. Honestly, it's kind of frightening based on how many people get mad at me because I go against something MatPat said, but then also tell me that I'm wrong, that it's the Bite of 83, not 87, even though I agree with MatPat on that point. And at 9, the 2-eye theory. The 2-eye theory states that in FNAF 3's bad ending, there are 2 eyes lit up in the head and the back, which we assume to be Golden Freddy, to show that there are 2 souls inside the animatronic. This isn't the case, okay, and I'm just gonna tell you why. Firstly, it would be more difficult to tell that it was an animatronic head in the back if there was only 1 eye lit up, since all we see of this head are the eyes. And the second eye being lit up could very well just be a reflection from the first light, since it's so dark. Notice how Freddy also also has light coming out of his other eye, but he doesn't have a second soul. Secondly, Crying Child wasn't introduced into the series yet, not coming until the next game that wasn't even going to happen until the community was disappointed in the Springtrap jump scare. Since this was supposed to be the end of the series, that's why we released the Souls in the Happiest Day minigame. Also notice that only one person wears a golden Freddy mask in that minigame, and according to the official Freddy Files Updated Edition book, quote, you'll see an image of broken animatronics heads, each with a lit eye, meaning that Golden Freddy in the back only has one eye lit. And considering how this is the official guidebook to the series, we kinda need to take it as law. And at 8, Sparky the dog. In the early days of the first game's lifespan, someone began to spread rumors online about a hidden 6th animatronic named Sparky the dog. Sure enough, screenshots began to crop up on Tumblr of this secret animatronic. Of course it was Tumblr. Reportedly, Sparky the one-armed dog was a non-violent animatronic and would never attack the player, only appearing occasionally in the backstage doorway, hence why we never saw them. However, it was eventually revealed as a hoax by the creators, Tumblr users Kodai Bear and Win, with all the screenshots being photoshopped. I mean, I feel like that would have been pretty obvious, but I don't know. Did you ever think that Sparky was real? Like, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, at this point, my knowledge of FNAF was limited to exactly what MatPat said, because I was terrified of anything horror related. Yeah, like even the Eddie Brock becoming Venom scene in Spider-Man 3 was terrifying. But yeah, I mean, I played it. I played FNAF 1 on like the bus home from school, but I did it muted, so I didn't have to deal with the jump scares. Okay? There was a girl sitting next to me. I felt pretty badass. And at 7, fan games. There have been multiple instances of people in the comments using points or story elements from FNAF fan games to try to prove my theories wrong. For example, a while ago, a YouTube user commented saying that Vanny's mask appears in a fan game called Aftermath. So my statement of her mask appearing in a DLC to a game that's meant to look back on past tragedies of the franchise, and that could mean that she's from the past, would have been false, even though Aftermath is a fan game that has no canonicity in the main series, which I don't understand because, like, why would you try and use a fan game to prove me wrong? Like, on a video that has nothing to do with that theory, no less. Like, he didn't even comment it on that video. He commented it on another video. Someone else even commented on yet another video where I included fan characters for context, since the main series didn't have 10, where they said fan games don't count since they're non-canon and are in a different universe. Which was trying to be a dig at me for using fan characters, but since there aren't 10 Springlock victims in the actual FNAF series, in the books or the games combined, I kinda had to. But this only supports my point. If I can't use fan games in a list, which I can because it's my list, you can't use fan games as evidence for a theory, and I don't do that either. And at 6, Cassidy. In my personal opinion, I think the idea that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed is wrong, okay? Here come the comments, I know what's gonna happen. In my head, okay, there is way more evidence for Crying Child being the one you should not have killed. If you're interested in the reasoning for that, to actually see if I may have a point instead of just getting mad right away, please go check out that video. It's linked up in the iCard, either now or later. However, the main reason I believe it's Crying Child, aside from the rest of the evidence, is because William would have been the only one around for Crying Child to possess when he dies in the hospital. Cassidy was around the Golden Freddy animatronic, but unless William brought his work with him to the hospital, which is highly unlikely given the fact that his child's head was crushed in 1983, possibly before Golden Freddy was even created. So reasonably, if Crying Child was going to possess someone, it would end up being William. He would then come to see the horrible acts his father would commit 2 years later, and then intend on keeping him alive so that he could suffer for them. Since in the end, it was William's fault that Crying Child died, since he had superpowered Fredbear's jaw, again, which is the only thing that makes sense. It's a mistake not to consider that a possibility, but I can already hear the comments now. Halfway through, and at number 5, Dead Afton. Okay, here we go again. There's gonna be so many mad comments on this video. William Afton didn't die in the spring locking incident that we see in FNAF 3's 8-bit minigames, okay? He didn't. I know there are still plenty of people who think that he did die, but he didn't. MatPat even said it himself, since the majority of people who are saying this are also the ones who say I'm wrong because MatPat said whatever, so, okay? He said in one of his FNAF 3 or 4 timeline theories or something that To note that you don't see William die in the suit, okay? You see him convulsing because of the spring locking and then twitching, but he never stops moving. And thanks to the man in room 1280, we know that William was being kept alive by the spirit of one of his victims that the book calls Andrew, but the game's called The One You Should Not Have Killed. And we know that these are meant to help fill in blanks from the past, thanks to a Reddit post from Scott from 2020 saying, "Let me at least say this, future games will look forward, but the novels will fill in some blanks from the past." So this book single-handedly gives us a reason as to how William survived all those years other than Remnant, okay? The One You Should Not Have Killed was possessing him, and might still be. We don't know. And at 4, Princess Quest. According to one very adamant viewer during my recent 24-hour live stream, okay, there's a theory going around that MatPat also talked about, now that everyone seems to believe, because again, MatPat talked about it, that the princess in Princess Quest is actually meant to be Cassidy. And while I don't agree with this theory, it's still a theory nonetheless, so I'll talk about it. I'll give its little moment here. This theory generates from some apparent files within one of the games, guessing that it would have been security breach since there are 3 Princess Quest games in that one compared to the FNAF VR mobile version where there's only 1. But apparently, according to this viewer, those files indicate that the actual name of the character is Cassidy. I don't know how they really indicate that, and I mean, like, I don't know how anyone found that. They wouldn't really elaborate. They just kept spamming that it was Cassidy, despite me saying that I don't care about that because that's clearly not the case in my opinion, because like if you think about it, in the first Princess Quest game, that's when you get trapped by Glitch Trap, right? That's when you get possessed by Glitch Trap, and then you spend the next 2 games trying to break free. Like, the only reason I'd believe that it's Cassidy is for purely symbolic reasons, since Cassidy is trying to torture William, at least if they are the one you should not have killed, which again, I don't believe, which would end up giving her motive to free Vanessa from William's control. But that's the only reasoning that I'd be able to, like, think for this theory, which makes it seem more like a hypothesis to me. And again, we get captured by Glitch Trap in the first game, which clearly indicates that it's actually Vanessa. And honestly, this could be what Vanessa's doing in her head. Okay? Like, this is when Vanny's taking over and Vanessa's not in control, this could be what Vanessa's doing, trying to fight back, okay? Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Mrs. Afton death. The story of Mrs. Afton, if there even is one, is a mystery that we've been debating for ages. A story that hasn't even had a slight amount of explanation, okay? No references, no mention of an actual name, nothing. So naturally, there are theories about it. However, these theories have no actual base in-game lore and instead focus on FNAF animated music videos for the most part, and stories that are treated as canon and sometimes scarily heavily so. The truth is, okay, we have no idea what happened to Mrs. Afton currently. We don't know if there even was a Mrs. Afton, or if it was just a baby mama, or if William had like a surrogate so that he could have his own children and just paid some woman to have his kid. Hell, okay, these kids may just be adopted for all we know. Either way, for some reason, and I don't know what video really caused this to pick up, a load of people think that Mrs. Afton died in a car accident and then is now possessing Ballora. I mean, it's a possibility, certainly, but that doesn't mean that it's canon. This is still a problem to this day, with many people just a couple of days ago trying to tell me what happened, mostly treating their statements as fact. A couple examples if I may. Quote, William killed Mrs. Afton, he stuffed her body into Ballora. Or, William Afton killed Mrs. Afton and Mrs. Afton now is Ballora in sister location. And Mrs. Afton is Ballora now though. That last one was meant to be a fact. Like, there is no interpreting it otherwise. They intended that on being like a correction. All of these are equally possible, okay, but nothing is actually canon. And as far as we know for certain, Baby is the only possessed sister location animatronic. And I think that the fact that there's so much fighting against what actually happened to Mrs. Afton indicates that none of this is true. The other animatronics may have like the remnant in them from the original Missing Children robots, but that's it. A Ballora themed staff robot being present at a table in Security Breach only means that Ballora was meant to represent the mother, not that she possesses the animatronic. Are we saying that like William is possessing the staff bot and so is Crying Child? And yeah, no, we're not. So like, she's not possessing Ballora. That's not a thing. Ballora isn't possessed. Penultimately, into number 2, Character names. The names of various characters over the years have remained mysterious. Sometimes they don't have a name, other times an alias like the purple guy, or other times they just get random names decided by the community. However, in all of these instances they don't end up actually being canon. And something I've noticed a lot in the comments is the misuse of names that either have no origin or very weak origins and people believing them to be canon. One of the best examples right now is Crying Child and Mrs. Afton. Crying Child currently has two names that are really being used, Evan and Chris, although now there might even be Gregory, which is a whole other can of worms. But none of those names are canon, okay? And only one of them is an actual theory, and not even a strong theory at that. So far, they've only been able to find E, V, and A, and not the N in any solid fashion. And the whole Clara Afton thing is just very outlandish to me. Just because there's a name doesn't mean it belongs to someone, okay? Does that mean that like Crying Child's name is Vlad because the purple character was named Vlad, or is that William's new name? Like, no, guys, come on. Look, if you're going to apply those rules to Clara, you have to find someone who's named Vlad. Alright, that's the rules. And finally, in number 1, origins. Going along with the whole we don't know anything about Mrs. Afton thing, or names are being misused, we don't really know why Afton decided to start killing people. And more particularly, kids specifically. He could just be your good old run-of-the-mill psychopath, but some people assume that it's because his kids died. However, that is literally impossible, since his kids died as a direct result of him wanting to kill other kids. Elizabeth dies thanks to getting scooped by Baby that was specifically designed for that purpose. And Crying Child died after Elizabeth and as a result of an animatronic with too much bark in that bite. Since like I've been saying in other videos for ages, there were no spring locks that could have failed in the mouth since it was already in suit mode, so all the spring locks had been released. Also there'd be no spring locks in the mouth because it's an open mouth. So his children died as a direct result of him wanting to kill kids. It could have been that when his wife or baby mama or whatever Mrs. Afton was left him, that's what caused him to trigger, but we can't know that for sure. The truth is we really have nothing to go off of as to reasons why William started killing, because it wasn't because of possession or his kids, because he doesn't learn about those until after he starts wanting to kill people, okay? Maybe a Fazbear Frights book will let us know when like the 12th one comes out with all the discarded ones. I don't know. And 10, Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, which she's not, but you know what, for you guys. This is one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't actually consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed after all is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer though, so since it's potentially a mistake but could also be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm gonna go with number 10 for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which he's not, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that included Cassidy was certainly a mistake, since it caused literally everything else in his life to go downhill. I mean, it was starting to go downhill, but it started going even worse, okay? And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others, okay? So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, because she's not the one you should not have killed, which is still the case, I don't care what you guys say, I know. Count the missing children's incident itself as the mistake. And at 9, blueprints. There is no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated, I'm guessing, that plays the first time you open up Sister Location, just showcases how stupid this man is, okay? The cops know what these animatronics are capable of, and what they were designed to do. And you wanna know why? Because the blueprints are just readily available. This man included wireframes of a child being stuck in Funtime Freddy and just left it on his computer. What? Why would you do that? Well, that's so stupid. So when they found that, because you know obviously they're gonna search his computer, they instantly ended up being even more suspicious of him, and then they were keeping an even closer eye on him. That's also probably why he ends up starting to dress in the spring Bonnie suit even, maybe, which ultimately ends up screwing him over as well. So yeah, designing the Funtimes as killbots was definitely a bit of a mistake, but then leaving the wireframes on your computer was something even dumber, especially considering how one of them was meant to symbolize your dead wife wife, and the other one ended up killing your daughter. And it ate Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she really turns into. Because, like, somehow, this also didn't make Henry end Afton instantly, because if he had, I would understand that. But in the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes Afton to disassemble them and then release their spirits that then scare you into your spring Bonnie suit that crushes you, and then you start going even crazier. But even discounting the game aspect of her, like, killing being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the books specifically, unbeknownst to her, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost, but it's also revealed that the animatronic is also, her adult form is also Baby as well, who can switch between her human and baby form at will, and then her human form doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books also ends up being Baby, which is just a huge mistake for both Afton, Henry, and Scott Cawthon. And it's 7, Henry. And while we did mention killing Charlotte, why didn't you off her dad after you realized that he knew everything? Like, why did you think that killing Charlotte would not have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, hence the green bracelet that he gave her, since he was trying to take extra care to protect her and then she still died. I mean, he could have done more, but that's still a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, okay? And he hasn't even needed vengeance at that point when he gave her the bracelet. So then, you know that he's gonna come after you, or at least seems like he will, so why didn't you kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. Like, yeah, or even if you're paying them off, you'll be fine. They won't put you away for 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well, especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. And then without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for missing kids, so, like, come on, just finally off Henry, and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even Springtrap alive and then not get burned 3 separate times. Plus your son would be alive, so yeah. Well, Michael would be, not Crying Child. And at 6, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, or at least all of it. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of failsafe that allows her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect some random kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series and Afton's life, you'd think that maybe he would have smartened up, at least after 40 fucking years. But, cause like, this is like having a self-destruct button on a bomb, or if the Flash has like a steal all my speed button that someone can just press, it's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? You know? Like, this is like probably one of the dumbest things that Afton has done. You know what? I think there are some dumber things, but depending on the way you look at it, it could have even been higher on this list. But seriously, like, what's the point to put a way to undo your evil plans? Like, it's one of the most ridiculous things in this story. And I get that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon. So like, we could have done without it. It's stupid at this point. William has the brain capacity of a freaking toddler. Halfway through into number 5, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault, since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth, and Michael did that, and then the spring locks failing was because he was crying. Mostly people were complaining about that on TikTok. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. And you know what? Even not just to me. It should be to all of you as well. The spring locks, like, they weren't in use. They didn't have to keep the things to the side because it was in an animatronic mode. And even if it was, an animatronic jaw would require so much power to actually, like, accomplish the closing of that. So like, the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally superpowered the jaw of Fredbear, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, or maybe he was originally planning on using Fredbear, but then after his son got crushed in it, he was like, yeah, no, let's move on to Spring Bonnie, okay? This is just the worst way of going about it. There is no way that this was a spring lock failure. The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the spring lock mechanisms, which are the things used to keep the robotic parts to the side, which are the things that would have failed, weren't being used. The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress of keeping the robotic bits away from the person inside the suit, and then they fail, and then that's when all the metal parts go back to where they were. So if it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're already in use, okay? Keep in mind, again, the term for spring lock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also sometimes referred to as a spring lock, but I'm talking about the actual bits that would have failed because they weren't in use. In at 4, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, what about your daughter? I'm kidding, although we can't really be sure if she was intentional or not, but rather, I mean, what about getting your own kid killed? Like, I don't know how William thought that this was going to work out for him. I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in, and then make sure that my kids love the design so that I know it will work. Hey, honey, come here, Dad wants your help designing this thing. Like, what? Because like then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and then going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that is basically perfect in her eyes. Like bro, like William, why did you think that this was ever going to work out in your favor? Why did you think that this was going to just be all peachy? When has a kid ever listened to a parent? Especially at seemingly what her age is, especially when they might be loaded because you have a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dads when they say not to touch a giant robot made specifically to appeal to their generation? Yeah, great idea. You are a special kind of stupid. Just like add a blacklist of kids not to take. Really. I mean, you have facial recognition tech in FNAF 2. So come on, just set up a blacklist. Just do it. Listen to the Shia LaBeouf and just do it. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, animatronics. Like how the absolute living hell did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would also ruin the pizza place. The heat from the animatronics insides when they're actually like moving around would also speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood of mucus and it was smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away wasn't important for the plot, he should have been caught on that and that alone instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Huh, that's not related. Oh, they even make like bone crushing sounds when they move. And nah, we don't need to check these out. Or maybe we should. You know what? Fine, we'll take them in. Oh, look, we found the bodies of the missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest. Like, boom. I don't see how this wasn't an open and shut case right away. Like, this was so goddamn stupid. They shouldn't have made it to the first game. His whole plan was a dumpster fire of bad ideas. And even if you think it was the puppet who put the bodies in the suits, why would they do that? Like, why would they hide the bodies? But ultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the brains behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in the universe, we'd expect a lot from William Afton. Like, maybe using the brain that made these. Or maybe that's asking too much. Because, I mean, he's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer who avoided the cops for how long? So, you know, he should really know what he's doing, right? Apparently not, since after discovering the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets, but inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims. When seeing them, he ended up panicking, which is kind of reasonable in my eyes because, you know, they're freaking ghost kids, but also they're ghost kids that you killed. So, then this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring-lock suits, including the spring bodysuit he uses to kill people, ends up climbing inside the suit in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and scare away the ghost kids. However, dumbass didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, and just his probably sweat, which caused the spring locks that were active in this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him, if only. And finally, in at number 1, the Platinum Rule. The biggest mistake that William has ever made, and I will stand by this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his own establishment, okay? It's unknown if this was always his intention, or maybe if he planned to kill somewhere else and then just was like, no, I'll do it here. But Like, come on, who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic for your business? Okay, dealers don't kill their best customers. It's bad for business. So why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else. This is basically just killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back while the investigation is underway. It didn't help your business either, okay? You had to close the first location, resulting in you opening another one that killed your daughter, and then you had to close that one and open up a new one, which ends up getting closed, and then you get locked in a room for 30 goddamn years, okay? This one mistake leads to literally everything else in the series. You don't do that. The platinum rule, we learned this from Barney Stinson. Don't crap where you eat, okay? If you just don't do it.